Perfect. So, welcome to welcome to Living Your Best with Advanced Metastatic Chronic or Non-Curable Cancer, Coping Through the Holidays. Um, Today's topic is Coping Through the Holidays with Joni Mann and Ruth Kohut. My name is Janine, and I'm so pleased that you could join us for tonight's speaker session. Our health and well-being are connected to the land and the environment that surrounds us. We acknowledge that the land we share, learn, and live on are traditional territories in Alberta of Treaty 6, Treaty 7, and Treaty 8, Métis settlements, and the 6 regions. This is the home of many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. Here at Wellspring, we are both settlers and Indigenous, and we pay tribute to those whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries. Wellspring acknowledges the traditional healing pathways and knowledge of our interconnectedness with the land as gifts provided by elders and knowledge keepers. Living Your Best is a collaboration with Cancer Care Alberta and Wellspring Alberta. And now I'm going to do a short bio of our speakers. So first we have Joni Mann. She is a social worker. She is a social worker with a focus on supporting adults living with advanced illness. Joni discovered her passion for palliative care with Hospice Calgary 20 years ago. After working with various hospices across British Columbia and Ontario, Joni feels privileged to continue supporting individuals and their loved ones as they navigate their illness, symptoms, beliefs, and values alongside the meaning of living. We also have Ruth Kohut, who is the director for the Living with Advanced Illness Center, Hospice Calgary. Ruth is a nurse with a master's in science and has a diverse healthcare career. She has worked in areas including clinical genetics, public policy, and hospital administration. So, without any further ado, please join me in welcoming Ruth and Joni. Thank you.
Oh, Janine, thank you very much. Good evening, and a sincere thank you. I think Joni and I really appreciate this invitation because Wellsprings, Alberta, and our Living with Advanced Illness has some commonalities in terms of, the clients that we work with, our principles, our values. So it's a privilege to present here today. And as Janine shared, my name is Ruth Kohut, and I'm here with my colleague and very seasoned counselor, Joni Mann. And I'm going to try to navigate. I hope there aren't distractions with some of these. This down here, for example, I'm not sure how to hide that, so I apologize. So, holidays, although it can be, a renewed time for hope and being thankful about sharing ourselves and our time with our loved ones, mixed emotions during these special occasions is very common. And whether you have cancer or you are caring for someone with cancer, this upcoming season can prompt a lot of questions and a lot of time that needs reflection. Some questions that you might have in mind that you've already have is, how do I take care of myself or my loved one during this really, really busy holiday season? How can I celebrate when I have so many other concerns on my mind? What will my life or my loved one's life be this time next year? So these are the questions that are very, very common. And it makes me reflect on a recent publication, and I hope you're aware of this publication called Hope for the Best and Plan for the Rest, published by Dr. Sammy Winemaker and Seen Xiao. And they speak of 7 key ways of navigating through life-changing diagnoses and share something that's very similar to a parable in regarding two arrows. And what they share is that the first arrow, or the first, when you first receive a diagnosis, that is something that you cannot change. And the second arrow, or the second piece that is something that's more within your control, are how you experience the illness, and becoming equipped with information and meaningful support and effective means of coping. And so Joni will be approaching this topic of coping through holiday seasons through the three, as she calls it, the three C's: choose, communicate, and compromise. And it's about she incorporates her experience as a counselor, being present and supporting you and your caregivers and loved ones faced with a life-changing illness during a time where previously you may have had a different experience. Joni will be approaching this topic of coping through the holiday season through a conversation, and she's very good at conversations. And she'll incorporate her experience as a counselor, being present and supporting individuals and caregivers and loved ones faced with a life-changing illness. Additionally, Joni will speak about values and valuing the time creatively. So before we begin, I just wanted to share with you that the Living with Advanced Illness Center, as I shared previously, similar to Wellsprings, Alberta, is our focus. Sorry about that. Our focus is to help people find hope and well-being through compassionate care at any time through their illness, their advanced illness, and perhaps end of life and bereavement. The focus here, of course, is on the advanced illness. And our counseling, we have, my apologies. Our Living with Advanced Illness Center offers counseling support services. We also offer community education. So we have, similar to this, we have an online Dying to Know education session that's offered every month. And we also offer a companion program that I can speak to later if time allows. And so with that, I would like to pass this on to Joni, and thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. Welcome, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us tonight. I kind of, as I was reflecting when they requested or inquired if I would be interested in doing a talk with you guys, I must admit I'm not a huge public speaker. It's not really my wheelhouse. I'm more kind of one-to-one and really like face-to-face contact and getting to know individuals so that I can really support where they're at and what this is like for them. So I kind of tried to reflect on this conversation as far as what I've learned over the last 20 years through all the families and individuals that I've supported. And it's not necessarily this season holiday specific, as far as really a broad for any kind of time that you find there's a lot of gatherings, there's a lot of focus on something specific. And so I feel like this is really broad in the sense of useful for birthdays and summers and holidays and vacations and all the other stuff that goes along with it. So please feel free to put any comments or questions into the chat. And Ruth and Janine will be kind of monitoring that. And then I'll make sure that I pause at certain times to kind of, recenter ourselves, catch up to where we're at, and then we can move on. The first thing that I really kind of wanted to make use of the chat for was if you could just provide me with some insight into what brought you here. So when you saw the topic, what was it that you were looking for, hoping for to get, so that I can kind of use that throughout this conversation to ensure that I touch on some of the things that you're really hoping to get out of tonight. I think the first thing that I really want to start with is that there's no real right way or right answer to managing the holidays. So what I've come to learn is that there's a lot of expectation sometimes to continue traditions, continue rituals, um, continue past actions that have had a lot of value that may not have the same meaning at this time for where you're at with an illness or as a caregiver. And so what you may have found joy for in the past, this is maybe not the season that you feel as joyful as you have in the past. And so I just want to really grant everyone permission to really be where they're at, and that it's okay to not feel as excited or joyful or celebratory as maybe those around you or what you've had in the past. I think that's a huge one, is to validate that and to really give permission for them. But also on the flip side, to give permission to have joy. So if you find that you're actually more joyful or excited about something and people are kind of questioning, well, you just got diagnosed and you're really not feeling well, how can you be, again, having permission to be where you're at, and that it's okay if you're finding joy and celebration in a time that people may be questioning. The second thing that I kind of wanted to acknowledge is that there's so many things happening. I've learned over the years that there's so many things happening for individuals at any given moment when you're not well. If you're in treatment, different times of your treatment, the response of what's happening within your body. We've just gone through COVID for how many years? The COVID numbers are upswinging and spiking again. And if you're immunocompromised, what does that look like? There's so many other things around energy, the amount of energy that you have and the expectations of family gatherings, social gatherings, different traditions that you may just not have the energy mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually to engage in. And what's that going to look like? Also the obligation, it's my obligation to be able to do these kind of things, and I don't want to let anybody down. And really feeling that burden of trying to not be a burden. And so I really want to acknowledge that, and part of that choose and communicate and compromise is something that we'll talk about as far as working together with those that are supportive to you on how to navigate some of those things when you're feeling some of those ways. So maybe I'll kind of stop here real quick and take a look at the chat. So dealing with the family and friends talking about end of life. Okay. So that's a really good one. So I'm just making notes for myself here, dealing with end of life conversations. So if I could just get some clarity, is that, and you can just answer in the chat, just clarity around if that's a place that you're not really comfortable having conversations and you feel like they're trying to have those conversations with you, or you're wanting to have those conversations and nobody around you is wanting to have those conversations, because I do hear both sides. So if you're able to just provide a bit of clarity, that would be great. Hoping for tips on how not to overstress and burn myself out over the holidays. That's a huge one. And so we can talk about that, and maybe we can work together on that in the conversation part at the end, where we can share, maybe some people might have tips on some of the things that they've used in the past that they found really helpful as well. And then let me slide to the third one here. How to manage expectations and how to approach others that things may be different. Okay. So I just want to address that one right off the start, because I think it's a nice direction that we can go into, is in the sense that I always tell people, this is your story and nobody really knows and understands what this is like for you, because they haven't walked your path. And so this is a real opportunity to teach people what you need, and also teach people how to support you. And whether that's change, and that change may be needed, and they just don't know. They don't know what they don't know. And most people that are surrounding you that are a real strong support network and care about you would do anything they could to make things a little bit better for you, because they can't change what's happening. They can't fix it for you, but they would be willing, those that care about you would be willing to do anything to make this just a little bit better for you. And so I think that is a really valuable piece, is, teaching people that it is different, and what does it look like for you, and what do you think that you may need to kind of get through this chunk of time, knowing that it may be different in a week or 2 weeks or whatever, but being honest with them to the best of your ability, and in teaching them on how they can support you and what you're needing. How to cope with tears, stress, and maybe the last Christmas. Yeah. Okay. Holidays include first annual diagnosis. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Lost my pen. Okay. So I just have someone else saying they're an oncology social worker, and they're hoping to get some insights and thoughts so that they could help patients. Okay, so that's great. Thank you for joining, so that maybe you can share some of the learnings that you learned from all of those that are here tonight, to help support you in the work that you do. Thank you. Discussions with family about maid arrangements. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So just to clarify on that, that is the follow-up to dealing with conversations. And so if that's something that I can support you on, as far as having made conversations with family, especially if it's around the holidays here, then please just continue providing me some clarification if I'm missing the mark, because I definitely don't want you to not feel like you were heard or understood, or that I was acknowledging and meeting what you're wanting. Okay. Okay. So, the first thing that I think that I'd like to kind of go to is assessing. I want you to reflect and think about how you're feeling about the upcoming holiday season. So we got some insight through the chat, but really just take some time to kind of think about how you're feeling about it. When you think of it initially, is there dread? Is there sadness? Is there doubt? Is there dread? Is there joy? I think that's the number one thing I would encourage all of you as individuals who are ill and caregivers, is to really reflect on how you're feeling. There's often a lot of anxiety that comes along with it. Anxiety about meeting expectations, being able to participate, the last Christmas potentially, and what this is going to be. So there's a lot of pressure to make it as good as possible. I can share a story about a family that I was supporting here over Thanksgiving, and they worked really hard to try and make it the most memorable, special Thanksgiving they possibly can do. They put on a big dinner. They all dressed up and had a family photo. They did some things they hadn't kind of done in a little while since the illness was discovered. What was interesting, speaking to each individual family member that I'm supporting afterwards, was listening to the common theme of how awful that Thanksgiving weekend was. And the commonality of what was awful was, we don't do family photos like that. The last one we did was when our dog died, and now we've done it again. And it just felt wrong. And they didn't talk about it as a family. I heard it through each individual session with them, and I just thought it was an interesting theme that they felt the pressure to do this expectation of having this last family photo, and they all felt actually really uncomfortable with how it went down, and they all made the same connection of why it was uncomfortable. So I thought that was quite interesting. The other thing that I thought was interesting as I listened to the family was, they talked about the stress and the pressure of what that dinner was like. And then in the end, the individual actually didn't have the energy to sit through the dinner, didn't have the appetite. And then everyone felt like they just failed on all levels. And so it was real good learning for the family on kind of what they really valued. And so we've talked together as a group about the value of really just spending time together. And it didn't need to be all as a big group, but interspersed in a card game here, sitting by the fire here, maybe going for a short walk here. One family picture with somebody on the couch over here, but then another picture over in the corner reading a book, snuggling over there, and not kind of feeling like they needed to make it this storybook movie memory thing, but really actually honoring how they function as a family and what they found really special. So I think I would encourage you when you're thinking about how you're feeling about the upcoming holiday season, it's also about thinking about what this means to you and what do you really need to get out of it? What are you hoping to get out of this time of year? And what do you value? And then through that time of reflecting on that, it goes to that communication piece of really sharing with your partner or your support network, those that you entrust to be in that circle of care for you, and having really good conversations around what you value and what you need out of this time and what they're hoping to get out of this time. And then that brings in that compromise piece, right? So another thing that this family did this year was during that Thanksgiving weekend, there was a huge birthday celebration and a graduation thing for another family member. And they really had to work through creatively how that person could participate, but also recognize they only had an hour or two of energy to be able to leave the house at a time. What's their backup plan if they can't go? What's their backup plan if they go and they need to leave? So the family decided to take two cars so that if the individual needed to leave at a certain point for whatever reason, someone was willing to leave, but the rest of the family could stay and still participate in all the fun activities that are still happening within the family and the celebration piece. And so that whole family didn't feel like they needed to leave, and the individual didn't feel like they were burdening everybody and felt guilty that they were wrecking the fun for everybody. And so that is the valuable piece of open conversation and communication, as well as compromise on what that's going to look like. That can't happen without really honoring where you're at, what you're wanting, what you're needing. And sometimes you may not know what you want, but you may know what you don't want. And that often is a good place to start. Okay. I'm going to just pause for 1 sec. I'm going to read the chat here to make sure. I love Christmas, but I'm feeling anxious, just getting everyone to be themselves and just give themselves grace to be themselves without pressure. Yeah, that is very, very true. Communicating that, letting everyone know that you're aware. Like, I love Christmas and I really want this to be special for everyone. And let's figure out together how can we make this as okay as possible for everyone with joy and not just sadness. And focusing on not necessarily what we're missing and what's not happening, but what can we do and what can we celebrate. I hope that's kind of making sense to everyone. Or if I'm off mark at all, please don't hesitate to kind of let me know if I'm missing something. I find it really hard when I can't read the room. I can't see faces, everybody's faces. I can't kind of get the nonverbal reactions. And so feel like I'm a little bit back in COVID time with masks and just kind of guessing through. So we can slide back to that health piece too. I think it's an important piece with COVID here still, and the vulnerability of the immunocompromised piece. And some people really are uncomfortable in being in spaces with gatherings and I think again we just need to go back to what we've been doing for the last few years, is giving yourself permission to be where you're at and your comfort level. I know a lot of individuals when they've gotten to a certain place in their life, they just don't care. Like, they'd rather spend time with people than be isolated. And there's others that are really, really nervous and hesitant and afraid to get something else because it just will add a layer of complexity. And I think it's important to honor and respect both and work together again with your support network on what everyone feels comfortable with so that you can try and figure out a way that everyone feels heard and supported in that. And we are always here, you know, don't ever hesitate to reach out to Wellsprings or to ourselves on kind of navigating some of these conversations, or if you just need support on how to initiate some of these conversations, we're always here. One thing that I do want to point out too is that coping, you know, I'm not an advocate on the word acceptance. It's not kind of in my wheelhouse. I don't use it at all. But I do use the word coping in the sense that coping involves understanding your new reality and determining how you will adjust in order to navigate what's coming. So it doesn't mean you need to accept. It doesn't mean you need to say this is our final Christmas and we have to do it this way. It doesn't mean you have to have conversations that you don't want to have. But what it does mean is that in order to be able to kind of navigate whatever's coming, which most of us don't know what's coming, there is a need to be able to kind of acknowledge that things are a little bit different. And what do I need this to look like so that I can kind of keep my head above water and navigate whatever is coming? And that sometimes is hard conversations. I think another thing that I want to bring forward when you're reflecting on what does the holiday time mean for you and what you're wanting is what traditions bring joy? You know, what are some things that when you think about celebrating or rituals that really they make you feel lighter, you know? I always tell those that I support, when you're trying to navigate the energy that you have, who you want to visit, what activities you want to do, I'm always encouraging people to think about what's adding to you and not taking. You know, if you only have 10 spoons, you don't want to be giving out all your spoons throughout the day. And then when there's something you really want to do, you don't have any left to give. And so it's so valuable to surround yourself with things and individuals and activities and options that add to you and don't deplete you. And if that means that during this holiday season, there's certain family members you don't see, maybe you video call them instead and not see them in person. If there's certain traditions that have always been traditions, but they actually don't bring you joy and they kind of are a bit burdensome, this is a really good opportunity to kind of create something new or not do it with no guilt attached to it. So giving you permission to make change. So storytelling. I'm a storyteller. That's kind of what I do. I think I'll just share a few things from some families that I've unfortunately over all the years I've spent a lot of time with people that it will be their last Christmas, potentially, or their last birthday, and I find none of us really know when our time is. And so one thing I have learned from doing this job for so long is the gift of really recognizing not to have any regrets and take out the word I should. I try not to use the word I should. If I'm saying I should, it means I already know what I want to do or what I need to do. So I try and scrap it. And I encourage all of those that I support to really try and not use that word either, because, oh, I should really make some cookies. Everybody really wants cookies. I always do that cookie exchange. Well, if you're saying it in that way with the word should, then it means really the cookies could go. And maybe there's something that's even more valuable that could be added. One thing that I do with a lot of individuals when I get to know them is kind of what your family traditions are in general, not just over the holidays. And one family that I was working with, they absolutely love to travel. And as a family of four, they had photo after photo in their house, all over the wall of their travels. And as they were trying to kind of navigate this Christmas time and gift giving, and one thing they shared was that they loved doing puzzles over the holidays. They would all hunker down with cocoa and they would do puzzles over the couple weeks that everyone was home. And so we came up with the idea that they took some of their absolute favorite family photos and trips and they had them turned into puzzles. And so it's a legacy piece in the sense that now every year when they pull out the puzzles during the holiday time and they're hunkering down, it's a memory gift that will keep on going for them. And so that's just one of the ideas over the holidays that that, you know, thinking about what you value, thinking about what means to you, what kind of things do you typically like to do over the holidays, and just creatively trying to come up with ideas to incorporate that into ritual, legacy, um, and ongoing gifts for those that are around you as well as for yourself. So speaking about legacy, the tree that is up on the screen was actually done by a 25-year-old that I was supporting who died in May. One of the things that I do typically do with families is talk about a legacy tree. And when I mentioned it to her, she just really globbed. She was very artistic. She loved to paint. And she is the first person in all the years that I've been doing this that painted her own tree. And then she actually, all the leaves there are the thumbprints of her family. And so it became a family project and it is hanging in her parents' house. And it will be forever a gift that she gave them, that the family can have forever. If Ruth shares the next slide. I caught her off guard, sorry.
No, just bear with me. It's not sharing. And it's a really nice next slide.
It's okay, it'll come.
Yeah, hopefully it'll come. I'm sorry about that. It's just not moving.
That's okay.
There we
There
go,
it is.
Joni.
So that's my family tree. My mom was diagnosed stage 4 just around her 75th birthday. And as we gathered for her birthday, I just bought canvases for every member of my family and I laid them out on a big table. Nobody knew what was happening and they really struggled with a lack of direction, which I kind of actually found pleasure in. And I just got people to dip their thumbs, pick a color they wanted, and put their thumbprints wherever they wanted. And then each person could go home with, you know, an entire canvas covered in thumbprints. And then a girlfriend of mine who's an artist actually painted in the tree. And what was kind of neat is that I loved how some of the thumbprints, which one of them is my mom's, is right in the heart of the tree. And so it's kind of neat. And mine actually is the purple one that's kind of falling off the tree. And so it's just kind of neat how that is a legacy piece that I will have forever, that I will never forget. In a time of celebration, it was not in sorrow, it was celebrating that she turned 75. And the other thing that's kind of precious, I think, about trees is that they demonstrate strength, they demonstrate seasons, they demonstrate resiliency, they demonstrate beauty and softness, and they demonstrate growth. So the tree, as your family expands, the tree can always be added to. It's not like a family photo where it's captured in time and you can't change that moment. The tree can be changed and evolved however you need it to look with time. So it is something that I find to be useful, and it can become a gift. Mine's framed. I have it in my hallway. I look at it every single day, and so it has a lot of meaning to me. There's some other ideas too that I've had families do where they've had photos of their grandchildren or their pets put on blankets. And for individuals that are, you know, quite often feeling a little cold because they've lost some weight, they're not moving around as much, they're spending a lot more time in bed. It's quite a cozy little thing to have wrapped around you. There's lots of different ideas that come to mind. I can't even tell you. I've had people write cookbooks and create those as gifts throughout the holiday season because they want to pass on tradition and culture and positive memories. I know for myself, every time I make ginger snaps, I think of my grandma. I can't not talk to her in the kitchen when I'm making them. It's just it's ingrained in me. And I've heard that from a lot of families, and it kind of creates a smile rather than just sadness. And so food is often a common ground for celebrating and sharing. I'm just going to read the chat here because I've seen a couple things pop up. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you like the puzzle idea and yeah. And the tree really was amazing. It was actually insane the day that I went. She had it propped up against the window and the sun was shining in and it was like backlit glowing. And she didn't do that intentionally. And it was very interesting to see how it evolved. She did an absolutely beautiful job. And I'm grateful that she allows me to share it. Is there any questions so far? I'm looking at the time. Am I kind of on point with what you're hoping? I know that there's some things that I wrote down here that we haven't gotten to yet, but is there anything so far that you feel like I'm off track or you'd like me to kind of acknowledge? Not yet. Okay. I feel like I touched a bit on the burnout and stress piece in the sense that, this is an opportunity to kind of state what you're needing. And it is not selfish. This is not a time that you would be considered selfish to prioritize yourself and the person that you're supporting. If you are a caregiver and you're supporting someone and you're saying no to certain people because you're an advocate for them, you're supporting them, and you're trying to really capitalize on what you have chosen together to be valuable, that is not selfish. Okay. And it is not selfish to be someone who's ill and say, I really don't want to see XYZ because I just don't have it in me and it takes more than I get from it. Okay. The other piece that I want to share with you is a woman that so beautifully shared with her sons. She's got 3 young adult sons. And she just came right out and said, I don't think I'm going to make it to Christmas. And I know you guys are holding off to take time at Christmas to spend time with me, but I would rather value the time with you when I can engage with you now than wait and maybe be around but not be able to engage with you as much because it's the holidays. And so that, just gave permission to the entire family to shift things. And if they need to have an early Christmas because Christmas, gift giving, whatever Christmas holiday looked like to them, does not need to land on a certain date because that's the date. So really giving yourself permission to really shift things. If you need to shift things earlier or you find you need to shift things later, it really doesn't matter because again, it goes back to that piece around valuing what does this time of year look like to you? What does it mean to you? What do you want to get out of it? What do you need to get out of it? And what do you not want out of it? And again, emphasizing that that's not selfish to really own that. Because again, anybody around you who is not ill and a part of this experience has no idea what this is like for you. Okay. I did see something in the chat here, so. Okay, good. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that I'm kind of hitting on point as I roll along without seeing faces. So yeah, we've kind of talked about, pick and choose rituals that provide the most meaning to you. Introduce new things. This is an opportunity to try something new. I would say if you have children in the home, it's really valuable to incorporate and include them. What do they need this holiday season to look like? because they might find that there's certain traditions that they're not willing to give up. But it may not mean that you can meet their need exactly, but how can you, again, compromise and creatively communicate with each other to find a middle ground so they feel heard and understood, but creatively come up with a way to meet in the middle and make that change. And kids are pretty adaptable if they're included and they're not left to not have information, which then leads to anxiety because they're not really, their imaginations become stronger and they don't really know what to do with the lack of information. And so they come up with ideas on their own. And so, really incorporating them, they may want to stay at the party. You may only stay for an hour and they may want to stay for 5 hours. So, how can you kind of make that work so that they feel like they're still having fun when you're not maybe able to do that entire time? I think any activity can become a ritual. There's no proper rituals. Anything can become that. We have a ritual on our Christmas tree. Every single time we travel, we buy a decoration from somewhere. Even if we can't find a Christmas decoration, we buy something that resembles. So my tree looks like some tourism place vomited all over it because it is not coordinated. But I can tell you this, every time my kids take things out and decorate the tree, they talk about the trips. Oh, I remember when we did this. Do you remember when we did this? And it has become probably our biggest ritual of the year, I would say, and something that they still seem to look forward to. Um, and it brings a lot of memories. And that's something that we value was traveling. So it can be really small. It can be making a new decoration. It can be making a gift for somebody. It can be creating stories, making little videos, creating games. So if I spent time with you and I got to know you, I would really just be able to kind of go with where you're at. So feel free if you're not really sure and you're kind of lost on some ideas to reach out and we can have a chat and maybe I can support you on some things too. I feel like that's kind of coming to the end of what I want to share with you. I feel like I've kind of hit all the points that I've come across that are really important. I do want to kind of make sure that we have this conversation around the comment that came in around dealing with conversations and made conversations. I also want to ensure that that's a safe conversation to have with this group. And so would you please, if you're comfortable sharing in the chat, if that's not something that you're comfortable talking about, we can save that to the end. And that those that want to stay on, we can have that conversation. If nobody has an issue with it, we can also have that conversation now. So I'm kind of going to pause just to make sure I don't take people where they don't want to go. So I'll give just a minute here for that. And then, okay, I haven't seen any responses. So Janine, I know that when we start chatting in conversation, if we go outside of the chat box, the recording stops, right?
Yes, so if we start to have conversation between the participants and you, then the recording would have to be stopped. So that will be something that would come a bit later. However, it looks like we don't have anything in the chat. We do have one person who said, I'd like to have ideas around recently bereaved. So not seeing anything against that conversation at this time if you would like to proceed.
Okay, so maybe we'll touch on the recently bereaved one real quick first. So just to clarify, are you looking for ways to support someone who is recently bereaved through this holiday season? Is that what you're asking? Let me just see if I get a response. If that is what you're asking, I would say supporting a person who's recently bereaved, regardless of holiday season or not, is the same. The best gift that I know it sounds weird to be saying it as a gift, but my childhood friend's 7-year-old died 4 years ago of an untreatable cancer. And she has been my best teacher as far as bereavement. And I would say one of the things that has been the best gift that she's given me is that we've openly had conversations around, I repeatedly say to her, I don't know how to support you, but I am here. I don't know what you need, but I'm here. And I'm following you as my guide to show me. And she often says, I don't even know what I need. And I said, okay, then that's okay. Then we don't know together. Sometimes she'll need me to be present and she just needs to talk about them. Sometimes she tells me, everyone's calling me, it's the anniversary, I don't want to talk about it at all, distract me. Take me somewhere else, I don't want to be in this place. And so I just follow her. And I would say for anyone, if you're supporting a bereaved person, I feel like just allowing them to be your guide, be present and be there, they will do the rest. Because you're already doing the work by just being there. I hope that makes sense to people. I am recently bereaved with a blended family and I need to know how to manage the expectations from my husband's family. Yeah, that's a tricky one. So I think what I would say to you in that situation is that you don't really need to know how to manage their expectations. It really is a conversation again, if you feel safe conversing with them and saying, I don't really know what this is going to look like for you this holiday season, and I don't really know what it's going to look like for me. And maybe we can have conversations around what we're hoping, what we're needing, and then maybe together we can figure out a way to kind of get through this to the best that we can, knowing that maybe next year it will look different. Does that kind of answer, provide you with a little bit of support on that piece? Because I think what I often hear is people don't know what they need. They don't know what they want. They don't know the end, and things are changing, you know, whether you're anticipating grief, whether you already are bereaved, whether you're ill, the variables are up in the air and you don't really know what that day. I often hear it's day by day. And so getting rid of expectations, kind of scrapping that and really being honest and saying, I don't even know what's coming and I don't know what I'll need. I might anticipate, often that anticipation of an event is actually worse than the actual event itself. And so, you might find that you're dreading a certain day and it actually evolves to be not that bad, but you got caught off guard by a different day that you didn't see coming. And so that's the important part about just being open and giving yourself permission to be where you're at when you're at it. Okay. Okay, so I think it may be easier to have this conversation around MAID, not through the chat box, if that works for the group, because I feel like I would be able to kind of navigate that a little bit easier for myself if we could have a conversation around it. Does that feel okay to everybody? Oh, my screen changed.
So, Joni, just to clarify, we're going to have that piece after the recording is done. Is that correct?
I think so, and I think I think we've kind of, I think we've hit all the points. And so
Okay.
I feel like we're at the question and answer stage.
Perfect. Well, thank you for letting me know that. Let me just magic myself back onto the screen. Hello. Well, thank you so much for that. Um, like such a very informative presentation on coping through the holidays. Thank you. And for sharing your knowledge with those who are here today. Next, we then will move on to the Q&A segment of our session. We'll try to
Janine,
answer as many of your questions. Sorry, Ruth, go ahead.
and sorry, Janine, I just want to just
Yeah,
take 2 minutes just to talk about
please do.
individuals that may not have family and that family network and friends around. And I just wanted to share that social exclusion can be felt among caregivers that are providing care for individuals with cancer, and that we at the Living with Advanced Illness Center, I just wanted to share that we've just recently, within the past 6 months, launched a program called the Companion Program. And this program is free. And it's a program just about optimizing the quality of life and providing meaningful companionship and connectedness for both the caregiver and an individual with any advanced illness, obviously cancer included. And really what that is it's just about matching. We have trained volunteers that go to individuals' homes and or facilities, and they come weekly, and they're just there to provide that connectedness, so that and again there to provide some respite for caregivers as well. So I did want to just make that aware, particularly this time of life, of the season. So I can then pass that on. And this is if you're interested in reaching out and asking about the companion program, or speaking to Joni further, this is the information. So thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Joni. Thank you, Ruth. I appreciate you jumping in there and sharing that with us. Very important to have that resource for this. So, okay, now we'll officially move on to the Q&A segment of our session. We'll try and answer as many of your questions as we can. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording at this juncture.